I spent $50,000 on a vacation, and my mother-in-law invited my wife's ex. I discovered the worst betrayal. I paid $50,000 for a dream family vacation, but everything turned into hell when my mother-in-law decided to invite my wife's ex. Not only did she ruin the trip, but she also forced me to make the hardest and most vengeful decision of my life. My name is Alex, and I've been married to Sophia, the woman I love deeply, for 5 years. Our relationship, in general terms, had always been stable, full of affection, complicity, and respect. However, there was always a constant shadow that never stopped slipping between us. Her mother, Patricia. Patricia is one of those women who feels entitled to everything, who criticizes, meddles, and tries to run other people's lives as if she were the protagonist of every story. From the very first moment, I knew she didn't really like me. She tolerated me because she understood that her daughter loved me, but deep down she never accepted me as good enough. I clearly remember once when she looked me up and down with disdain and said, "You're a good guy, Alex, but I'm not sure you're the best for my Sophia." She said it with a tone that made me feel like she was comparing me to a cheap, discounted garment that one regrets buying later. At first, her attitude puzzled me. I didn't understand the reason for her contempt until time opened my eyes. It wasn't me who was the problem, but Julian. That man had been Sophia's boyfriend during her university years. Tall, dark-haired, with a charming smile and that air of confidence that, behind the facade, hid the arrogance of someone who knows how to manipulate others for his own benefit. The typical guy who charms everyone with sweet words while betraying those he claims to love. Sophia and Julian were together for 3 years, from the time she was 19 until she was 22. According to her brother Pablo, those years were a nightmare for her. He cheated on her with classmates, supposed friends, and even with women he had just met at parties. On top of that, he manipulated her until she felt everything was her fault, breaking down her self-esteem. When they finally broke up, Sophia collapsed. She cried for months, and her family witnessed her pain. Over time, she managed to recover. When I met her, she had already left that stage behind, and she confessed to me that Julian had been the biggest mistake of her life. I believed her, and I never doubted her words. But Patricia never got over it. To her, Julian was the perfect son-in-law, the Prince Charming who slipped through her fingers. At every chance she had, she mentioned him as if he were a lost trophy. During family dinners, instead of talking about shared memories, she always brought up anecdotes with him. "Do you remember when Julian took us to that fancy restaurant?" At Christmas, she would dust off old photos of Sophia and Julian smiling on the beach or dancing at a party, as if those images were sacred relics. Even on the most important day of my life, my wedding, Patricia couldn't contain herself. While I stood next to Sophia, dressed in my new suit and my heart overflowing with happiness, she sighed and muttered, "Julian always looked so handsome in family photos." I swallowed hard, squeezed Sophia's hand tightly, and pretended I hadn't heard her. For 5 years, I endured those comparisons, telling myself that what really mattered was that Sophia had chosen me. I thought that, with time, Patricia would get tired of that absurd obsession. I was wrong. Remember, if you enjoy my videos, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Last year, after months of working double shifts at the construction company, where I'm a supervisor, I managed to save $50,000. I wanted to surprise Sophia with something unique, a break that would help us forget the routine and exhaustion of recent times. She is a primary school teacher, and her last year had been especially tough. Restless students, overly demanding parents, long nights preparing lessons, and grading notebooks. I saw her come home each afternoon with tense shoulders, dark circles under her eyes, and a forced smile so as not to worry me. I knew she needed a break, something that would bring her back to life again. One night, while we were on the couch, I told her, "We need something special, Sophia. A trip just to enjoy, with no stress or responsibilities." She smiled tiredly, leaned on my shoulder, and nodded. That gesture was enough for me to make up my mind. For weeks, I searched for the ideal place, something that wouldn't just meet but exceed every expectation. Finally, I found a luxury resort in the Caribbean. A paradise, white sandy beaches shining under the sun, a crystal-clear sea where you could see the fish swimming by the shore, rooms with private balconies and huge beds that seemed made to forget the world, oceanfront restaurants with aromas that promised to delight the soul. Everything was included: flights, lodging, meals, drinks, excursions, and entertainment. I booked it with my own card because I wanted it to be an exclusive gift from me to Sofia. I decided to invite some of her family members, her brother Pablo, her father Miguel, and a very close aunt. And although I doubted a lot, I also included Patricia. Naively, I thought this trip could be an opportunity to improve our relationship, for her to finally accept me. I planned every detail with precision. A full week from August 10th to 17th, filled with activities like kayaking, boat trips, and theme nights. By the time I finished, I had spent $50,000, the highest amount I had ever saved in my life. But I did it convinced it was worth it to see Sofia happy. When I told her about the surprise, her eyes filled with tears. She jumped into my arms, shouting with excitement, "Alex, this is incredible. We've never done anything like this." I hugged her tightly, feeling her warmth and joy, and for an instant, everything seemed perfect. I booked the flights, confirmed every itinerary, and had everything ready for the big date. 3 days before we left, Sofia mentioned that her mother had made a small change to the guest list. I thought it was something unimportant, maybe inviting a friend or a distant cousin. I never suspected the betrayal Patricia was about to commit. The day of the flight dawned full of excitement. I had the suitcases ready, passports in order, and Sofia's smile lighting up the morning. I felt that finally, after so many sacrifices, we were about to experience something unique. We walked through the airport among families who were also traveling, some with children running around and couples holding hands. Everything seemed normal until the unthinkable happened. Suddenly, in the middle of the airport crowd, a figure appeared that froze my blood. There he was, Julian, the last man I expected to see in that place. He carried himself with the same arrogant confidence as always, with a cynical smile drawn on his lips, as if his mere presence was enough to unsettle me. He walked toward us without hesitation and, with a tone bordering on mockery, said, "Alex, what a surprise. Nice to see you." I looked at him with a frown, trying to process what was happening. The air weighed heavily in my lungs. Sofia, at my side, had the same expression of bewilderment I expected to see. Her face showed a mix of surprise and anger. "What the hell is he doing here?" I thought. Sofia was the first to react. She turned toward her mother, who was walking behind us, and asked with a trembling voice, "Mom, what does this mean?" Patricia smiled as if nothing had happened, as if she hadn't done something outrageous, and with her condescending tone said, "Oh, darling, Julian had a few days off, and I thought it would be nice if he joined us. After all, he's always been part of the family." I felt the blood boil in my veins. I held back my rage so I wouldn't shout right then and there. "Who authorized this?" I asked harshly, trying to stay calm. She, as if she owned everything, calmly replied, "The airline allows name changes on tickets. I just had to make a small adjustment." At that moment, I understood everything. She had switched the ticket that was originally for Sofia's aunt and given it to Julian. My wife was furious. I was furious, but we were already at the airport with our bags packed. Canceling at that point meant losing a fortune, so I had no choice but to take a deep breath, swallow my anger, and board the plane. But inside me, I swore that if Patricia wanted to turn that vacation into a nightmare, I would make sure it became one for her. We sat in a row of 4. Me by the window, Sofia next to me, Julian next to her, and Patricia in the aisle seat. As soon as we took off, Julian started his performance. "Sofia, do you remember when we flew to Cancun in our second year? We laughed so much because of that pilot who spoke so strangely." Sofia, uncomfortable, smiled timidly and answered, "Yes, that was a long time ago." But he didn't stop. Patricia, as if waiting for the right moment, leaned forward and added, "Oh, those were such good times. You two always had the best stories." Every word was like a dagger piercing my ears. I forced myself to look out the window, to focus on the clouds, on the blue sky, on anything but those voices intent on reviving a past that was never mine. Sophia, although responding with short phrases, didn't shut him down, and I felt every contained laugh gnaw at me from the inside. At one point, Sophia squeezed my hand under the table and whispered, "Ignore him, please." I tried to follow her advice, but every word from Julian was like an electric shock that wouldn't let me breathe peacefully. Finally, we arrived at the resort at sunset, and I must admit that, for a few seconds, the place managed to erase my anger. It was even more beautiful than I had imagined. Tall palm trees swayed gently in the sea breeze. A turquoise ocean reflected the last rays of the sun, and an open-air lobby was filled with tropical flowers. The staff greeted us with smiles, cool towels, and pineapple cocktails that smelled like heaven. I inhaled deeply, filling my lungs with the salty, warm air. For an instant, I almost convinced myself that nothing could ruin it. Sophia and I were led to our suite. It was an impressive space. An immense bed, a bathroom with a jacuzzi, a balcony with 2 hammocks, and a direct view of the sea that looked like it was straight out of a postcard. Sophia hugged me tightly, her eyes shining with excitement. "This is perfect, Alex. Thank you for everything." I caressed her face and replied, "I did all this thinking of you." I kissed her forehead, clinging to the idea that maybe I could survive the entire week, even with Patricia and Julian lurking nearby. If I had moments like that with Sophia, maybe I could endure it. That night, to celebrate our arrival, we went to dinner at an outdoor restaurant. The tables were set on the sand, lights hung from the trees, and the waves of the sea served as background music. They serve us fresh fish with mango sauce, coconut rice, and flan that melted in the mouth. I was enjoying my first cold beer when Patricia, unable to contain her need to direct everything, decided to organize a family photo. "Sophia, come stand next to your brother. Now with your father. Oh, Julian, come closer too, just like the old times." He gladly obeyed, stood next to Sophia, and without asking, put his arm around her waist. To my surprise, she didn't push him away. I tried to get closer, but Patricia stopped me. "Alex, can you take the photo? I need it to be perfect." She put the phone in my hands, and I stayed there, like a stranger, watching my wife smile with Julian pressed against her while I was nothing more than the photographer of that grotesque scene. I felt a lump in my throat, but I swallowed hard and held back the urge to explode. After the photo, Julian stayed close to Sophia. He offered her a piece of his flan with the same fork he was using. She accepted it, laughing, while Patricia applauded as if it were the sweetest moment in the world. I ordered another beer, fixed my gaze on the horizon, and counted to 10 over and over so as not to lose control. That night, when we returned to the suite after dinner, the silence between Sophia and me was thick, almost unbearable. As soon as we closed the door, I exploded. "I don't like how your mother pushes me out of everything," I said, my tone harsher than I had intended. Sophia slowly took off her shoes, avoiding my gaze. She sighed, as if already tired of arguing before we even started. "Alex, don't exaggerate," she replied wearily. "She's just excited because Julian is here. Don't take it personally." That lit me up even more. How am I not supposed to take it personally? I'm your husband, Sophia. What's the point of all this if every moment your mother sidelines me, as if I don't exist? This trip was for us, not to relive memories with your ex. She set her shoes aside and came closer. She looked at me tenderly, though her eyes hid discomfort. "I know, and believe me, I love you for organizing all this. But please understand, I can't control my mom. I just want you to relax, please." She hugged me, resting her head on my chest. Her hair smelled of coconut and salt, like the air of the beach. "I love you, Alex. None of this changes what I feel for you." I want to believe her. I stayed silent, holding her, staring at the stars peeking in from the balcony. But inside me, a shadow of doubt was settling. I knew that those vacations, which should have been a dream, were already turning into an emotional battlefield. The next morning, I decided to take the initiative. I organized a kayaking excursion on a nearby river. I want to keep us busy, avoid drama, and above all, keep Sophia away from Patricia and Julian's influence. We woke up early. The sun barely lit up the resort as we went down to the dining hall. We had freshly baked bread rolls, orange juice, and strong coffee. The atmosphere was serene, tourists chatting softly, and for a while I felt that, at least for a moment, everything was under control. A van picked us up and took us to the starting point. The landscape was dreamy. A turquoise river surrounded by green mangroves, white birds crossing the sky, and a sun warm enough to make it pleasant. It was the perfect setting to forget about worries. Sophia and I shared a kayak. She sat in the front, wearing a straw hat to protect herself from the sun, while I paddled in the back, steering us. "Faster, Alex!" she shouted between laughs as we splashed water paddling. "They're going to catch up with us." For a few minutes, everything was perfect again. I heard her laugh, saw the sunlight illuminating her face, and convinced myself that maybe I could still save this trip. But the illusion didn't last long. Behind us, in another kayak, came Julian and Patricia, and he, as if the situation belonged to him, raised his voice. "Sophia, do you remember when we rowed at the university lake? We almost sank because I didn't know how to paddle." She turned her head and, instead of ignoring him, smiled amused. "Because you were terrible, not me," she answered, laughing. And they both burst out laughing, as if sharing a private secret that I could never reach. Meanwhile, Pablo and Miguel, in another kayak, talked about sports, oblivious to what was happening. I tried to concentrate on the scenery, on the waters glistening under the sun and the green leaves swaying in the wind. But every laugh from Sophia with Julian hit me in the chest like a hammer. At the end of the route, we reached a small beach, a hidden corner with fine sand and scattered palm trees. The guides awaited us with juices and fresh fruits on a wooden table. I sat with Sophia under the shade of a palm tree and handed her a glass of pineapple juice. "Are you okay?" she asked, gently touching my arm. "Yes," I lied, forcing a smile. "I just want you to enjoy yourself." Then, as if she couldn't resist, Patricia pulled out her camera. "Sophia, Julian, come stand in front of the water. Pablo, you too." She arranged them as if it were a professional photo shoot. Julian placed himself next to Sophia, so close their shoulders touched. I tried to approach so I could be in the picture too, but Sophia stopped me with a casual phrase that, nonetheless, felt like rejection. "Could you grab my hat?" I left it in the kayak. I nodded in silence. I walked slowly across the hot sand, feeling every step get heavier. When I came back with the hat, the photo had already been taken. Julian had his hand on Sophia's back, and she was smiling as if nothing was wrong. On the way back to the resort, Julian didn't leave her side. In the van, he sat next to her and showed her something on his phone, maybe pictures or videos, I don't know. Sophia laughed and nodded, while Patricia looked at them proudly, as if everything were the most normal thing in the world. I, sitting in the front next to the driver, looked out the window at the scenery, feeling that something inside me was slowly breaking. That night, back in our suite, the tension was unbearable. Sophia brushed her hair in front of the mirror, while I paced back and forth, unable to contain what I carried inside. Finally, I exploded. "Why do you allow your mother to push me out of everything?" I asked, my voice loaded with anger. She stopped for a moment, looked at me through the mirror, and then lowered her eyes, as if she didn't want to face my words. "Alex, it's not that serious," she answered calmly but distantly. "You know my mom, she's always been like this. I don't want to turn it into a bigger problem." I walked up to her, my heart pounding wildly. "A problem? Sophia, I'm your husband. I paid $50,000 for this trip. I planned it with all my effort for you, for us, and I feel like an intruder in my own life." She set the brush down on the table and turned to me. "I know," she said, with a sincere but tired expression, "and I appreciate it, truly. But please understand, I can't control what my mom does. I just ask you to try to relax and enjoy." She came closer and hugged me. Her hair smelled like the coconut products from the resort, and for a moment I wanted to cling to that embrace and believe her words. "I love you, Alex. This doesn't change what I feel for you," she murmured, kissing me softly. I looked into her eyes. I wanted to believe her, but deep down, I felt that the crack in our relationship widened with each gesture, with each look of complicity she shared with Julian in front of me. That same night, the resort organized a bonfire on the beach. The atmosphere was idyllic. A clear sky full of stars, sparkling like diamonds, the roar of the sea accompanying people's murmurs, and the warmth of the fire lighting up faces. They placed logs around the fire, and an employee played the guitar, filling the air with soft songs. I sat on one of the logs, trying to enjoy the moment, but I could hardly relax when I saw Julian approaching. As if no one else existed, he sat next to Sophia, so close their legs touched. He smiled with that damn confidence he had always carried. From a cooler, he pulled out a cold beer and, with a suggestive smile, offered it to Sophia. "Remember? Just like old times," he said, handing her the bottle. She took it, drank from the same spot where he had put his mouth, and then handed it back. Their fingers touched, and she didn't pull her hand away immediately. They looked at each other in the eyes and laughed about something I couldn't hear. Patricia, from the other side, clapped delightedly, as if it were the sweetest scene she had ever witnessed. Her expression radiated satisfaction, as if her fantasy of seeing them together again was finally coming true. I couldn't take it anymore. I got up in silence and walked toward the shore. The water was cold, licking at my bare feet. I watched the dark waves break under the moon and felt something slipping through my hands, something I might never recover. When I returned to the bonfire, Sophia smiled at me as if nothing had happened, but her eyes were no longer the same. There was a different sparkle in them, one that wasn't for me. The next morning, Sophia and I decided to go to the resort's pool. The water was warm, clear, and shining under the Caribbean sun. There were colorful floaties and lounge chairs around, full of tourists enjoying the day with drinks in hand. For the first time since we had arrived, I felt a moment of peace. We went into the water and started playing like children. Sophia splashed me. I pretended to be upset, and then I hugged her underwater. At one point, she wrapped her arms around my neck and told me with a radiant smile, "I love you, Alex." I melted in that instant. I kissed her, feeling that despite everything that was happening, we still had something strong between us. For a second, I wanted to forget everything else. But the illusion didn't last. Julian appeared, like a shadow we couldn't shake off. He jumped into the water with a wide smile and shouted, "Sophia, come on, let's play like old times." Before I could react, she swam toward him, as if those words pulled her back into the past. Julian lifted her in the water and threw her like they were teenagers again. She laughed out loud, screaming each time she fell. Patricia, from a lounge chair, applauded enthusiastically. "You two look so cute together," she exclaimed shamelessly. "Just like in college." Miguel and Pablo, distracted at the bar, didn't notice anything, but I saw it all from the edge of the pool. Water dripped down my face, mixing with a burning sensation that wasn't from the sun or the salt, but from rage. I wanted to punch Julian right there, to wipe that insolent smile off his face. I wanted to shout at Sophia to remember who her husband was, but I held back. I couldn't cause a scene in the middle of a luxury hotel. I got out of the pool and sat at the bar. I ordered a double rum, tried to calm the tremor in my hands. The ice clinked against the glass, but what truly burned was the image of Sophia hugging Julian in the water, too close, too comfortable. That night, I thought we would finally be alone. Julian didn't come down for dinner. According to Patricia, he had stayed in his room with a stomach ache. I thought we would finally get a break. We had a quiet dinner, took a walk, and then Sophia told me she wanted to walk along the beach. "I'll go with you," I said immediately, standing up. But she stopped me with a gesture. "No, it's fine. I just want to walk alone for a while." Her voice trembled, and her eyes avoided mine. I knew she was lying, but I didn't say anything. I stayed seated for a few minutes, trying to convince myself that I was imagining things. Then doubt got the better of me. I got up and followed her, hiding among the shadows of the palm trees. My heart pounded so hard I felt like everyone could hear it. And then I saw them. There they were, Sophia and Julian, in a dark corner of the beach, far from the resort lights. It wasn't a mistake, it wasn't a misunderstanding. They were kissing with a passion that shattered my soul. It wasn't just a brush of lips, it was a deep, desperate kiss. Julian's hands were on her waist, pulling her firmly against his body. Sophia's hands were tangled in his hair, her fingers pressing into his neck. They moved as if I didn't exist, as if the whole world had disappeared. I froze, my legs weak, feeling the ground tremble beneath me. The air slipped out of my lungs, and rage boiled in my blood. I wanted to run to them, to scream, to tear Julian away from her and beat him until he couldn't stand. I wanted to shout at Sophia to look me in the eyes and explain how she could do this to me. But I did nothing. I'm not the kind to cause scenes or draw attention, so I swallowed the pain and turned back. I walked to the suite with the sound of the ocean trying to drown out the roar inside my head. When Sophia returned 2 hours later, I pretended to be asleep. I felt her slip into bed, her breathing calm as if nothing had happened, and at that moment all I felt was disgust. I didn't sleep at all that night. I lay staring at the ceiling, replaying the scene over and over, like a film stuck on repeat that I couldn't stop. Her laugh, her lips, her hands tangled in Julian's hair, everything drilled into my mind, reminding me that the trip I had prepared with so much love had turned into the worst nightmare of my life. The next morning, I got up long before Sophia. I watched her sleep deeply, her hair spread across the pillow, as if she didn't carry the weight of the betrayal I had discovered on the beach. I looked at her for a few seconds with a mix of love and hate burning inside me. And at that moment, I made a decision. If Patricia and Julian wanted to ruin my vacation, I wouldn't let everything end without consequences. I got dressed in silence, left the room, and went straight to the dining hall. I sat with Pablo and Miguel, who were already having bread rolls and coffee. I pretended everything was normal, as if nothing was happening to me, though inside, I felt my world collapsing. When Sophia came down, she approached the table with a fragile smile. I gave her a forced smile in return because I couldn't show my rage at that moment. The day passed with light activities, walks on the beach, and superficial conversations, as if everything was calm. But my mind was working nonstop. I had a plan. I wasn't going to confront Sophia yet, nor Patricia, much less Julian. I was going to wait until the end of the trip, at the exact moment it would hurt them the most. The week went by filled with uncomfortable looks, fake laughter, and endless nights where I could hardly sleep. Every gesture between Sophia and Julian cut through me like a knife. Patricia, with her comments loaded with nostalgia, sank me deeper into my own resentment. And I, meanwhile, waited for the perfect moment to make my move. When the last day finally arrived, we prepared to leave. Miguel and Pablo took an earlier flight due to work commitments, leaving me alone with Patricia, Sophia, and Julian. And there, the stage was set for what I had in mind. After checking out of the room, I went to the resort reception. The manager, a short man with a mustache, greeted me with a professional smile. "Good morning, sir. Would you like to make any adjustments before your departure?" he asked politely. "Yes," I answered firmly. "I need to modify the form of payment. You see, I covered half of the trip in advance, but the remaining amount must be charged to my wife's and my mother-in-law's cards." The manager raised an eyebrow, surprised, but nodded politely. "I understand, sir. We'll need to confirm with them directly. Would you mind waiting a moment while we call them down?" "Of course," I replied, crossing my arms at the counter. The manager picked up the phone and dialed Sophia's and Patricia's room numbers. I stood still, my heart racing, but my face expressionless. After a few minutes, I saw them come down the stairs. Sophia wore a light blue dress that highlighted her tan skin, and Patricia, as always, with a floral blouse and that air of superiority that always accompanied her. They both approached, confused. "What's going on, Alex?" asked Sophia, frowning as she walked toward me. Patricia, behind her, crossed her arms with an annoyed look. Before I could speak, the manager stepped in. "Ladies, the gentleman says there's an adjustment in the payment. He mentions that the remaining half of the trip, $25,000, must be charged to your cards. We need your authorization to process the transaction." Patricia's expression changed instantly. Her voice, full of indignation, echoed in the lobby. "What nonsense is this? This is abuse. I'm not paying a dime." Sophia, nervous, stepped forward and grabbed my arm, trying to sound calm. "Alex, what's happening? Please explain." I pulled away before she could touch me. I looked her straight in the eyes, feeling the anger I had held in for days boil over. Don't touch me, Sophia. I saw you last night. I saw you on the beach, kissing Julian. Her face instantly lost all color. She froze, as if the world had stopped. Alex, wait, let me explain, she stammered, her voice trembling and her eyes filling with tears. Patricia opened her mouth, ready to yell something, but I cut her off by raising my voice. There's nothing to explain. I saw it with my own eyes. Your hand's on his neck, his on your waist. You can't deny it, Sophia. This is over. Sophia broke down crying, begging between sobs. Please, Alex, it was a mistake. It meant nothing. I swear. I don't want to hear it. I interrupted, stepping back. My voice was harder than ever before with her. I'm done with you. The manager cleared his throat uncomfortably but stayed professional. Ladies, we need to settle the payment. Do you have your card with you? Patricia's face turned red with fury. This is ridiculous. Alex, you organized this trip. It's your responsibility. I looked at her with contempt and answered coldly. I paid for it as a gift for my wife, but I don't have a wife anymore. So now it's up to you. With trembling hands, Sophia pulled her wallet from her purse and took out her card. She was crying, tears streaming down her face, but still tried to show some dignity in front of everyone in the lobby. I'll pay, she whispered, handing the card to the manager. The man swiped the card, but within seconds, the beep we all feared sounded. Insufficient funds, he announced dryly, handing the card back. Sophia lowered her head, unable to meet my gaze. I'll try again, she murmured. The manager nodded and swiped it again. Nothing. The same beep, the same message on the screen. I'm sorry, miss. Not enough funds. The silence was heavy, broken only by the murmurs of curious tourists watching the scene. Patricia, her face burning with rage, yanked her own card out brusquely. Here, use mine, she snapped, as if trying to prove she was still in control. The manager took it calmly and ran it through the terminal. A second later, the same beep sounded. Declined. Impossible, shouted Patricia, snatching the card back. Try again. The manager obeyed, repeated the process, and again. Nothing. Declined over and over. Patricia stood frozen, grinding her teeth in anger, realizing she didn't actually have the money she always bragged about. The stares began to pierce them. Guests, employees, everyone whispered among themselves. And then, as if wanting to appear like some cheap movie hero, Julian came down the stairs. His shirt was unbuttoned, hair messy, and that arrogant smile plastered on his face as he slowly walked over, enjoying the attention. What's going on here? He asked, feigning surprise. Patricia looked at him as if her savior had finally arrived. Alex wants us to pay for the trip. The machine keeps declining our cards. Julian, puffing out his chest, stepped forward and said arrogantly, Don't worry, I'll take care of it. He pulled out a black card from his wallet. One of those people flaunt to look powerful. He placed it on the counter and looked around, making sure everyone saw his chivalrous gesture. Charge the $25,000 here. No problem, he ordered, convinced he was about to humiliate me. The manager swiped the card. Silence. Then the beep. Declined, he calmly announced. Julian's face instantly changed. The arrogance vanished, replaced by disbelief. No, that must be a mistake. Try again. The manager did. Same result. Beep. Declined. Julian's face turned from the red of arrogance to the red of embarrassment. He tried to justify himself, stammering awkwardly. It must be the bank, maybe a temporary limit. I'm the manager of an important company. This can't be happening. Patricia looked at him with eyes full of disappointment. Sophia stood frozen, her face wet with tears. The people in the lobby weren't even pretending anymore. Some were even laughing quietly at the humiliation of the man who had tried to play the hero. I couldn't help a dry, bitter laugh escaping my throat. What a gentleman you turn out to be, Julian, I said with disdain. He avoided my eyes, hiding behind his phone screen as if he could solve it with a simple text. The manager, with a firm voice, put an end to the discussion. Ladies, gentlemen, we need to settle this payment now. If the funds are not available, We will have to retain your belongings until the balance is covered. The chaos was total. Sophia cried desperately. Patricia argued angrily with the manager, and Julian looked like a lost child making excuses. And I, in the middle of it all, knew it was time to deliver my final blow. I pulled out my phone, logged into my airline account, and with a few clicks, canceled Sophia's, Patricia's, and Julian's return tickets. I left mine untouched. No one noticed what I was doing. They were too busy drowning in their own disaster. In the end, the three of them scraped together what little they could. Sophia emptied what was left in her account. Patricia drained her last cent, and Julian juggled with a secondary account. Even so, it wasn't enough. They had to leave some of their belongings as collateral. And the worst part for them, no flights back home. I, meanwhile, returned to the suite, packing my things in silence. In just 10 minutes, I had put away my clothes, passport, toothbrush, and the essentials. On the nightstand, I left a handwritten note. I saw you with Julian. It's over. Don't look for me. I placed the note where Sophia would see it as soon as she entered. Then I grabbed my suitcase, requested a taxi at the front desk, and went straight to the airport. The plane took off with an empty seat beside me. I looked out the window as the Caribbean grew smaller in the distance. And for the first time in many days, I felt a bit of relief. Painful emptiness, yes, but also a strange peace. When the plane landed and I set foot back in my city, I felt as if I had just woken from a long, suffocating nightmare. I dragged my suitcase to the exit, hailed a taxi, and, as the vehicle moved through the familiar streets, a heavy feeling of loneliness wrapped around me like a blanket. I knew that in some way, I had lost everything. The love of my wife, the trust one had placed in her, and those years I thought were solid but collapsed in just a few days. When I arrived at my apartment, I turned on my phone. The screen lit up with a flood of notifications. Dozens of missed calls, text messages, and more than 20 voice notes from Sophia. I opened them out of curiosity, though every word felt like another nail in the coffin of our relationship. Alex, please listen to me. It was a mistake. It means nothing, I swear to you. I love you. Don't leave me. I need you. I was confused. Forgive me. It won't happen again. Her voice cracked between sobs. Each recording was a plea, a confession disguised as regret, but none of it erased the image of her kissing Julian on the beach. Then I saw Patricia's messages. They weren't pleas, they were threats. She had left me furious texts. You're a monster. You'll pay for this, Alex. No one humiliates my family and gets away with it. I'll get revenge for what you did to us. I read those words with a mix of anger and relief. Patricia was still the same controlling, poisonous woman as always, incapable of owning up to her mistakes. As for Julian, nothing. No message, no call. His silence said more than any words. He was the type of man who ran away when things got tough, the same man who had manipulated and cheated on Sophia years ago, and now left her alone in her mess. I took a deep breath, turned off the phone, and tossed it on the bed. Then, calmly, I opened the app and blocked Sophia's number, Patricia's, and Julian's. I had heard enough. I didn't want more excuses, no more tears, no more threats. I only wanted silence. A week later, I made the final decision to move out. I sold the furniture, gave away anything that reminded me of Sophia, and found a small apartment in another neighborhood. The new place had no luxuries, a simple bed, a dining table, and a window overlooking a park. But it was mine, and most importantly, it was free of ghosts from the past. I threw myself into work. I took on more shifts, filled my days with hours at the construction site, pending projects and new goals. Physical exhaustion was a refuge. It helped me not to think too much. The first few months were tough. There were nights when I woke up drenched in sweat, haunted by dreams of Sophia and Julian. But little by little, the silence began to heal me. There were no more fake laughs from Patricia in my ears, no more arrogant looks from Julian piercing my pride, no more desperate pleas from Sophia on my phone. There was only me rebuilding my life from the ashes. And though the pain was still there, I learned to see it differently, as a scar that would never disappear, but one that reminded me I had survived, that I had the courage not to remain silent, not to let myself be trampled anymore. That trip, which had started as the biggest dream I'd ever planned, ended up being the harshest lesson of my life. And though I still have a long road ahead, I know I'm no longer the same Alex who left for vacation hoping to strengthen his marriage. Now, I am a different man, ready to start from zero, without chains, without poisonous mothers-in-law, without false Prince Charmings, and most importantly, without Sophia. Remember, if you enjoy my videos, don't forget to subscribe to the channel.